as the investigation moves forward, eventually we're going to resolve this case. But time factor-wise, I don't know.
The man long suspected of being involved in the disappearance of teenager Natalee Holloway will be extradited to the U.S. We'll talk about what happens next and what the private investigator for Natalee's family thinks about the case. Back in 2005, the disappearance of Natalee Holloway while on vacation in Aruba is a story that captured the attention of people across the nation and around the world. Natalee was an 18-year-old high school senior. She had just graduated from high school in Alabama and was on a trip to Aruba with friends when she vanished. Her mother, Beth, became a fixture on cable news each night as she demanded answers in Natalee's disappearance. A teenage boy, Joran Vandersloot, was one of the last people to be seen with Natalee in Aruba. He denied any involvement in her disappearance. Questions arose about Vandersloot's relationship with Dutch officials conducting the investigation. Joran Vandersloot was never charged in Natalee's disappearance, and she remains missing until this day. Joran Vandersloot was charged, though, in Peru in 2010 with murdering a woman named Stephanie Flores 5 years to the day that Natalee Holloway disappeared. He is serving time for Flores' murder in Peru and will now be extradited to the U.S. temporarily to face charges of extortion and wire fraud. He's accused of trying to get Natalee's mother to pay him $250,000 for information about Natalee's death and the location of her remains. Joining me to discuss the very latest in the disappearance of Natalee Holloway and the pending extradition of Joran Vandersloot is TJ Ward. He's a private investigator who worked for Natalee Holloway's family back in 2005 when she went missing. TJ, welcome back to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you.
Tell me, if you would, your just general feeling, your reaction to the news that Joran Vandersloot will be extradited.
Well, I think this is great that he's going to be brought to the U.S. and face charges for the fraud and with Natalee's mother that happened in 2010. He was set up when he asked for $250,000 he was claiming he was going to tell Natalee's mother where Natalee was, which never transpired. He set up, they gave him the money, then he left and went to Peru. And of course, you know that he killed Stephanie Flores 5 years the same day in 2010. Natalee went missing, and he's not given any new information since then. But him being extradited to the U.S., I think, is a very, very good thing, so he can face the charges here, which may bring some justification and relief to the family.
How is Natalee's mother doing?
I have not spoken to Natalee's mother other than through Dave Holloway, Natalee's father. I've had a great deal of time with him, and if you might be aware, we did a TV show back in 2017 together, and in the disappearance of Natalee Holloway. But I understand that she's set up quite a few things for Natalee, and she's been on a big push to get him here to face charges.
TJ, I don't have to tell you, but I do want to bring it up just for our listeners or viewers who may not have been familiar with the case or may have been on the younger side when this happened. This was a story that took the country by storm, and really the nation, or, across the world, people were paying attention to this because Natalee went on a trip. It was her senior year in high school. She went on a trip and never came home and went missing. And there was a lot of controversy surrounding how Dutch officials handled the disappearance of Natalee Holloway, the investigation, Joran Vandersloot's father's ties to officials there.
Well, let me tell you something that brought my attention very quickly after I got involved and got hired. In 2005, I went to Aruba and I started looking into the investigator that was handling the case for the disappearance of Natalee Holloway, and learned that the investigator, Vanderstraten, was Vandersloot's godfather, his dad's best friend, and worked in the Minister of Justice from 95 to 98. When I exposed that on national media, the next night, the Aruban newspaper, Tito from the Aruban Today newspaper, got on Greta Van Sester and said that they had a warrant for my arrest for not having a work permit. And Greta said, this is going to be very interesting. They're going to take the investigator for the Holloway family into custody. But nevertheless, the whole thing was made up. And this is the way Aruba operates, the intimidation. But they, as you're well aware, there's the media went back down there again last year with Beth Holloway and almost got arrested. And because the Aruban authorities do not want to create any more problems, they had a real problem with people coming to Aruba and spending money, and most of them are Americans. So they knew they would have a big problem on their hand if they stirred this situation up with the Hollywood, with Natalee Holloway going missing. There's been a great deal of media coverage in 2005. Every media outlet in the U.S. was in Aruba, and this was a major big story every night for 2 years.
I also spoke with Nick Akerman. He is a former Watergate prosecutor. We discussed the process by which Joran van der Sloot will be extradited to the U.S.
Well, this is all done diplomatically to get him back. I mean, it's all pursuant to a extradition treaty between the United States and Peru. And so through diplomatic channels, which means the U.S. State Department, they will be sending over to Peru the indictment that was handed down in Alabama, and asking that he be extradited to the United States for the purpose of standing trial and being sentenced. So I suppose in Peru, his lawyer would have the opportunity to possibly contest this, but I think it's going to be an almost impossible task to keep him from being extradited. The case, the two counts in question, wire fraud and extortion, are pretty much right into the area where extradition is permissible. The penalties involved, extradition is permissible. So it seems to me it's just a matter of time before he arrives in a jail cell, federal jail cell in Alabama to be tried on these charges.
What I find interesting about this is the fact that it's always been said that he would have to do his time in Peru first. He still has a lot of time left on that sentence for the murder of for the murder of Stephanie Flores, rather. So why now? What do you think is going on here, since he'll be temporarily extradited?
I think it's because maybe a change in the government there, and that Peru is more receptive to doing it at this point. That would really be the only explanation, because this indictment came down in, I believe, around 2010. So it's been sitting there for a long time. And I think it may just be the change in government in Peru that's facilitated the ability to do this extradition.
The allegations in this case are that Joran van der Sloot tried to basically shake down Beth Holloway, Natalee Holloway's mother, for $250,000. In exchange, the allegation is he said, "Give me 250 grand. I'll tell you where her remains are and what happened to her." He's already serving time in prison in Peru for murder. So what incentive does he have to make this case maybe go away? Does Natalee Holloway's mom and dad finally maybe get some answers?
Well, possibly, but keep in mind, he is not charged with the murder. And he's unlikely to come across and admit to the murder because he could still be charged, presumably, where the murder took place. So it's unlikely we're going to learn much about the murder, but we are going to get some sense of justice here with respect to what he's done. And what will happen is, if he's convicted, he'll be sentenced in the U.S. and then sent back to Peru to finish his sentence there. And when that sentence is finished, he will automatically come back to the United States to complete whatever sentence he receives in the United States.
The thing that's, to me, though, that's so interesting about this is the fact that he offered, allegedly, this is what the prosecutors say, he offered information in exchange for cash. So that makes you think, yes, he has information.
One would think. I mean, he was the last person that was seen with her before she disappeared. So he's obviously a prime suspect. He was arrested afterwards. The police there did not have enough to charge him. He must have denied having done anything to the police. So, yeah, it would seem that he would have that kind of information. But again, I don't see him actually coming clean, because anything he says could be used against him in a criminal proceeding in the jurisdiction in which the murder took place.
No doubt. Well, thank you, Nick, for joining us as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's it for this edition of Law and Crime Sidebar podcast. You can listen to and download Sidebar on Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, you can always watch it on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. I'm Anjanette Levy, and we will see you next time.